because the job will go on without you, but your family always needs you. Okay. That's a tough one, but I'm a nurse, and I'm not only a nurse, but I'm a nursing professor. And right now I teach at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And I know a lot of your questions are talking about what made you choose the career path that you chose. And it's kind of a long story, but I think a lot of stories, everyone has a pivotal moment. I always ask my students, what's the reason you want to be a nurse? And a lot of them have different answers, right? So, and it always goes back to like a little bit about themselves and who they are and their identity and how they see themselves. And so about myself, I was raised as a Navy dependent. My dad was in the Navy and he was in the Medical Service Corps. And we moved all around. And what he did was he tested for radiation health, like radiation poisoning in the Navy. And so we were always attached to anything that had a nuclear like plant for the Navy. And I was exposed to a lot of the medical side of what my dad did, as well as kind of the military side, because we were moving around so much. And so moved around all over when I was a kid. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but my mom was a microbiologist. Like I said, my dad, I don't know exactly how I would classify him. I guess I would just say he's like a scientist. His PhD was in pathology. He didn't do anything with that. He got it, and then that was it. He never did anything with it. But he's always been big in the medical side of things, and I think that's kind of what shaped me when I was growing up. So that's a little bit about my background. And I am the second of 4 kids, and we were homeschooled. Initially, my parents homeschooled us because we were moving around so much. And when we moved out to Washington State, the school system there wasn't that great. And we were in the Catholic schools, and my mom had some theological differences with some of the teachers there. So she pulled us out to homeschool us. So I was homeschooled from 3rd grade till I went to college. And then I went to college at Villanova University, which is outside of Philadelphia. And the background on me. I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a nurse. There you go, short and sweet. So I had a conversation with my dad probably when I was 17, and he was like, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, oh, I'm down to 2 things. Like I could be a teacher or I could be a nurse. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And like I said, I was 17. And right around the time when I was having to make some tough decisions, September 11th happened. And I was pretty affected by September 11th. Like I remember where I was my mom, we were homeschooled, so I was sitting with my mom, and a neighbor was calling to ask me to babysit, and I was on the phone with her, and she was like, oh my gosh, turn on your TV right now. And so I told my mom to turn on the TV, and we saw the 2 towers be attacked. And there was this moment where they flashed to doctors and nurses that had flooded out of one of the hospitals in New York City. And like the doctors and nurses were looking at the mess, and then they like ran inside and got their bags, and then they ran towards the mess. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine that, like courage to see a problem and to go like be a part of fixing it. And so it really inspired me. And I guess it tipped me into the nurse category versus the teacher category. And I love kids. At the time I was doing aftercare for the Catholic school in downtown Frederick. And it was an all-girls school. And so I worked there every day after school, and I loved kids. And that's why I was thinking I wanted to be a teacher. But after September 11th, I was like, no, I'm going to be a nurse. And then came the question of who's going to pay for it. And my dad was like, well, have you thought about being a Navy nurse? And it seemed to me like, especially my older brother was at the Merchant Marine Academy going to go into the Navy, and my dad was in the Navy. And I thought, oh, this would be like even one step further helping people if I joined the Navy. So I did the Navy ROTC program at Villanova University, and I majored in nursing. And there were a lot of times when I questioned, is this the right major for me? Should I be doing this? It was very difficult for me because my mom is very heavy on literature and theology and history and religion. And then I went into the science degree where I was kind of like, I was a little bit of a fish out of water. And I'm so glad I stuck with it. I pick up things. I have to be very diligent and study very hard at it, but I do end up picking up things. And I ended up loving the program. And Villanova is a pretty rigorous nursing program. So I happen to pick a really tough one. This ends up being my luck all the time. But I picked a really tough one, but I stuck with it. And so that's kind of how I ended up picking my major. So when I was in the Navy, I was a med-surg nurse for 2 years. And when you're med-surg, you kind of see it all. You see the medical side, which is like people who are just sick, they have chronic health issues. And then you see the surg side, which is the surgical side. And that's the side where people have had surgeries. Either they've had an orthopedic surgery or they've had any number of surgeries, laparoscopic surgeries, gallbladder surgeries, tons of surgeries. So I was doing that for 2 years. And then I decided I kind of wanted something different. And the Navy moved me to the ER. And how it works in the military is it's not always what you want, it's what they need. And so they needed ER nurses, and we were easier to deploy. So I got moved to the ER, and I was an ER nurse in the Navy for probably 3.5 years. And then I was kind of at a crossroads. Like I'd done my payback for ROTC, and I was thinking, should I continue in the Navy? But this was where I was at the crossroads. I had been dating people I'd met in the Navy, and I was finding that I was struggling finding a good Catholic man in the military. And so I started praying about it a lot. And nursing is a very versatile job. And so I was thinking, do I stay working as a Navy nurse, or do I change my environment, like nursing wise, and try to see if it puts me in a better position to meet someone whose values align more with my own? And prayed about it a lot. And I decided to resign from the Navy and go to grad school at Catholic University, which is where I now teach. So a lot of my decision in becoming a nursing professor was kind of like, where does this fit in with having a family, but still feeling like I'm bringing something to the world? Like God's given me gifts. How do I share those gifts in a way that's conducive with what I feel his plan is for me? And so it was a very difficult decision, but when I put in my letter of resignation and I applied to graduate programs, I was applying to the schools that I felt would bring me closer to my parents. It was very hard. I was stationed in Italy at the time. And I know it sounds like a dream come true, but I missed my family. I'd been homeschooled. So here I am, I'm alone overseas. I'd already deployed to Kuwait for 6 months. So I kind of just missed my family. So I came home to DC. My parents are in Maryland. My older brother lived across the street from me in Alexandria, Virginia. And I was back home again. And so when I was looking at my master's programs, I selected one called the Clinical Nurse Specialist path for public health nursing. As an ER nurse, I'd seen what the problems were when people hadn't had any health care. And so I kind of wanted to go back to like the more preventative side. How do we get people to not have to come to the ER so much? And I did the education route. So the Clinical Nurse Specialist degree, I'm sorry, this is so technical, but the nurse practitioner degree is very much a provider degree. So you are going in more so as in the stead of a family practice physician. A nurse practitioner can do things that don't require they can refer people to specialists. So the nurse practitioner, a lot of my friends did that. That's not my dream. I was like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to sit around and, be responsible for all these patients coming in. What if I'm wrong? What if I miss a diagnosis? So I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. But one thing I had learned being a Navy nurse was that you teach a lot to corpsmen. So the enlisted Corps staff who come and they help you, you're training them to go out in the field because they're with the Marines. So I'd done a lot of education as a Navy nurse. And this clinical nurse specialist route, I was like, wow, I can really make a difference in this. I can go into education in the public health realm. And I was still an ER nurse at the same time while I was in grad school. Unfortunately, I discovered, and this might have been just being in the DC area, a lot of the public health jobs that were available were very much focused on teenagers and safe sex practices and contraception, and it wasn't what I had thought. I had thought I would go into public health and I was literally going to go back and I would stop people from having diabetes. Like I thought I was going to go back and make sure that people wouldn't have to come to the ER because their health would be so well cared for because they would have so much education and I would be a nurse going out into the community and doing all this stuff. But I found out that there was no money for that, especially in like the Northern Virginia area. They really just want to push you into the little boxes they want to push you into. So I was like, okay. And I was using my GI Bill to get my master's. And my advisor was like, why don't you get a doctorate? Because if you get a doctorate, you will be able to then teach, because right now you're teaching fellow nurses about public health and education. But if you get a doctorate, then you can go back and you can teach undergraduate nurses as well. So I was like, that's a really good idea. I still had GI Bill left. So I decided to apply and I got into the doctoral program there at Catholic University. And I finished out my doctoral. I got my doctorate in nursing practice. And during all this time, it was like it was a big leap of faith. Like I told you, when I got out of the Navy, it was like, I'm taking a leap of faith, Lord, that you're going to provide for me. Because there I was, I think I was 27 or 28. And I was like, I have not met any Catholics to date. I was dating people that, again, I didn't feel like it was aligned with my own values and morality and what I wanted with children and like a family. And then I got out of the Navy and I met my husband, who was in the Navy, which is ironic, but he's this good Catholic man. And it was almost like the Lord was telling me, like, you did the right thing in trusting me. I need you to continue to trust me. And so a lot of the decision-making points in my life where I've had a crossroads, I've had to like sit down and be like, Lord, what are you calling me to do? What do you feel is the right thing for all the gifts you've given me? Mainly the gift of loving to teach and being around younger people. How do I utilize what you've given me in a way that's still like applicable and tangible? It makes me feel like I have a little bit of worth. And I know that's not the whole point of this, but like for me, I wanted to feel like I was contributing. And so that was pretty important. And so, I met my husband while I was finishing my master's and starting my doctoral program. And he was like, we're moving out to San Diego. And I was like, okay. So we moved out to San Diego and I was teaching at the hospital there and also working part-time, picking up some shifts when they needed it. But it still was very difficult because a lot of times with nurses, when they've done a role for a certain amount of time, they get kind of jaded. And I was like, I really wish I could go back to before the nurses get jaded and teach them. And then one of my friends was like, there's an opening at one of the universities here for a nursing professor job. We're really looking for nurses who are doctorally prepared. Would you consider working here? And it was right around the time when I was having my son and my daughter had been in daycare full time, and I was having my son. And I was like, if I become a nursing professor, not only can I teach my version of compassionate, Christ-centered nursing to undergraduates, but I will also have more time for my children. And so it seemed to me that God was kind of directing me to becoming a full-time nursing professor, or not full-time, but like making that my full priority and teaching part-time. So I left the University of California, San Diego. I left UC San Diego and I started teaching at 2 different universities out in San Diego. And it has been the greatest blessing. it has been such a great thing for me. I sometimes can't believe how fortunate I am, that the Lord opened this up for me. And I've just been very lucky that I have had this opportunity to work 2 days a week and still be very present in my children's life, and still, feeling like I'm making a difference in the lives of young women who are pursuing nursing degrees. So that's, sorry, a very long path, but that's how I became a nursing professor, from being a bedside nurse. So, sorry. My favorite part of my job right now is that I get to know the heart of the nursing students and what motivates them to want to become a nurse. And having been a nurse, when you're an ER nurse for so long, you kind of see every spectrum of person who approaches nursing as a career. And so it really does help. It's the most rewarding thing to be able to talk to students who are forming their identity as an adult and forming their identity as a nurse, and to be able to be like, here's what motivates me, what motivates you, and let's talk about it. The last thing anyone wants is to have a nurse when every day you're in the hospital is the worst day of your life, right? No one wants to be in the hospital. They're like, this is terrible. I hate you all. Why am I here? I'm sick. So trying to make sure that the people who take care of you have the compassion to be able to give you that support that you need when you're having the worst day of your life is very important to me. And to me, I love working at Catholic University, and I worked at Point Loma Nazarene University, which is a Christian university. It's not Catholic, but it's Christian. But they said to me, you have the freedom to bring Christ into the classroom. And that was very important for me because that's my motivation. Why do I want to be compassionate to my patients? Because I want to see Christ in them. Why do I want to take care of people and their families on the worst day of their life? Because I want them to feel Christ's love is, illuminated in me, and it's radiating to them. And I have the freedom working at Christian schools. You have the freedom to be able to say that and to kind of impress that upon your younger students. And I have found that it is so rewarding. A lot of times and I've had male and female students, but I feel that they are so craving people to just tell them what truly motivates them, and it's authentic and it's real. And I think that that's something that really attracts me to being a nursing professor, and it's what really makes me feel that my job is so rewarding. So yeah. Well, the most difficult part of my job is probably the most difficult part of any job, and it's when you encounter someone who you cannot see eye to eye with, you cannot seem to crack what's motivating them. I'll give you an example. I usually teach small groups because I'll teach in the classroom, and then I'll bring the students to the hospital, and we'll say, this is what we learned in the classroom. We are now applying it in practice. The majority of the time you have 80% of your students who are absolutely engaged and so excited to learn, but there's always about 20% of your students that you have a hard time getting through to. And I am not a very strict person. I'm strict in the way that I have high expectations of my students, and I tell them right off the bat what my expectations are. The most difficult part of my job is when I'm dealing with a troubled student who won't accept help, won't ask for help, won't be willing to work with me. And I always struggle with, how far do I go for them? And I've failed students in the past, and it breaks my heart to do it. But that's the most difficult part, is when you have a student that you feel that you're just not connecting with them. And to me, I love being a nursing professor, but I want to make sure that my students are safe when they go to take care of these patients, so it's a greater responsibility than just the education. You're also, their future patients' lives and well-being is kind of in your hands a little bit, because you are imparting the knowledge and then giving them the skills to take care of people. And so it's very difficult to have to say to them, this is not safe. You have not shown to me that you can be competent and independent on your own taking care of this patient. And these are the most difficult conversations I've ever had. And a lot of times when I sit down with the students, I'm like, I want to help you. Please let me help you. And some people just have a demeanor and attitude, a personality that they just don't jive, or they just don't want to let me help, or a lot of people think that they know more than I do, or it's just, that's the most challenging part of the job, is dealing with, and it's never a lot, but it's usually 1 or 2 students per semester that I really do struggle with. That makes it a challenge. Well, I'll tell you the first challenge I faced, and it was right when I got to college. I was pretty sheltered when I was homeschooled. And when I showed up to college, I remember my mom, like, she didn't know anything. So she was like, I don't know, here's a suitcase. Like, we'll go to Bed Bath and Beyond and get some stuff. Like, they have a checklist. Let's do that. And I was like, okay. So when I showed up at college, everyone had Vera Bradley matching bags. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I was like, what the heck is this Vera Bradley stuff? And I felt totally out of my element. And I think I projected that on my studies, because I was like, dude, I am not fitting in here. There's no way I'm going to fit in and be a good nurse. I look different than everybody else. Like, I'm doing Navy ROTC at this like really preppy college. I didn't even know what preppy meant. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So that was one of the biggest challenges to overcome, was with my own identity. And I think I struggled a little bit with finding out who I was. And my dad had a conversation with me, I remember, when I was a freshman, and he was like, part of going to college, it's definitely about the education, but it's also about learning who you will be as an adult and shaping that, and surrounding yourself with the people who will assist you in shaping you to become the person that you want to be. And at the time I was like, Dad, I'm surrounded by preppy people who like wear pearls to nursing class at 8 a.m. and I don't know what to do. And my dad was like, you need to find where your heart can grow. And if it's probably not with the girls who are wearing pearls, you know, to the 8 a.m. class. And he was right. And it took me a while to kind of figure that out. But then that became a recurring theme, I think, in my 20s, that like struggling to fit in, not knowing where I fit in. And I think that was a challenge in my career as a new Navy nurse. And then every time you start over something, your learning curve is so huge. Making sure that you have the maturity to be able to handle criticism and feedback on your performance is always something that I think when you're younger, it's more difficult to struggle with. I'm 37 now. Now people are like, Maura, you did a crap job on that. I'm like, yeah, I did. I'm sorry. Like, I'll definitely fix that. You're so right. But like when you're 22, your feelings are hurt. And so I think one of the biggest challenges I had early in my career was, how do I become the good Catholic woman that I know I want to be in this environment that, and I really struggled with working on Sundays, because when you do shift work, you have to work on Sundays. And the way the Navy did it was you worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so if I worked night shift, I could go to mass, but if I worked day shift, I couldn't. And so I didn't realize how much I needed that weekly connection with our Lord to just be like, yeah, you're coming back to your center and your purpose of why you are who you are. And I made friends with the Navy chaplain who was at the hospital when I was a new nurse. And it kind of helped me, because he would come by, if he knew I was working in the ER on a Sunday, he would come by with communion. And so that I had challenges from my own personal identity of like who I was in my profession. I had challenges of living out who I thought I was supposed to be as a Catholic woman in the beginning of my profession. And then I already touched on it. I had struggles knowing, who am I supposed to be as a woman, as a partner, as a wife? Like, how do I meet the person I'm supposed to be with? So a lot of these were challenges that I did struggle with. And a lot of times you can't help it. You end up dating the people who surround you. And so a lot of my friends who were nurses were either married to pilots or dating pilots. And so those were the only people I had met. And so I was dating a pilot who was not Catholic, who didn't understand why I was struggling without being able to go to mass. And ultimately when we broke up, I realized that I was trying to fit like who I was, like the identity that God had given me. I was trying to fit that into the box that had been provided to me by this guy I was dating. And I had to find out that you can have a profession and you can be a woman who is well educated and intelligent, and you don't have to fit yourself in a little box that's being provided to you by someone else. And I think that that freedom didn't come until I met my husband, and I started to realize that all these challenges I was facing with my career, because one of the primary challenges I had was career and faith. How do they come together? And then after you have kids, career and faith, really, I want to stay with my children, but I also want to be, someone who is giving back a lot. I had all this education. I had gone to get my master's and my doctorate. I was like, is God calling me to be a stay-at-home mom? Is he calling me to still be active in nursing? How am I being called here? So I would say my primary challenges to my profession all along have been, how do I put together my faith and my identity as a Catholic and loving God and being really, truly a daughter of God? And how do I put that together with what the world is telling me my profession is and what I need to do for my profession? And the one thing I will learn, and I know that your question was, what was the most challenging thing of the career? But one of the things I have learned through this journey is that if you do pray and you do put your faith in God and how you think that he wants you to be, the other things kind of do like fall into place. And it was a very long and painful journey for me to figure that out. I don't think, like I said, I was probably 28 or 29 before I figured it all out. And I thought I had it all figured out, but I was struggling internally with my own identity. And so I think that the greatest professional struggles that I have had is, how do I be a professional woman and still be a daughter of the Lord who's walking in his ways while still utilizing the talents and the gifts and truly the blessings that he's given me in a way that is for his glory. So I think those would be the biggest struggles. And they're less like everyday challenges, but more of like the spiritual and emotional journeys that you have as you're growing up and adapting to the different environment you're in. I would say one of the primary attributes that you need is humility, to be able to acknowledge when you are wrong, and also the humility to ask for help. For me, that is very difficult, and it's kind of tied into, so if humility is the attribute, the vice is pride. And a lot of times in the medical world, everyone is very proud of what they can do. You find that a lot of times with scientists, they're very proud of their work, and they're very, very confident in what they say. And when you're in that world of like certainty, there's not a lot of room for humility and for people to accept that perhaps they're wrong or there's another way to do something. And so I think humility is one of the most important attributes you can have. But humility is different than being a doormat and being walked on. Humility is recognizing when you've done something wrong and owning it and potentially learning from it, which is the goal. But pride, which is what I definitely struggled with, was, I think, the thing that held me back the most in my career, was not wanting to ask for help when I was struggling, not wanting to let people know that I needed help, because I was too proud to admit that I was kind of overwhelmed or drowning in whatever I was doing. So I would say humility and confidence, when you know that what you're doing is the right thing, to be able to stand firm in that confidence. So maybe that's more courage, the courage to stick with it if you know something is the right thing to do. So humility and courage, I would say, are the biggest attributes you would need. So the way that my personality is, it's not really my career's fault. It's more like my personality's fault. When I do something, I kind of jump in. I don't just like do a little thing. I'm like, oh, I'll just do it all. And it's difficult as a wife and mother. You want to do it all for everybody. Like, you want to get the laundry done, you want to clean the house, you want to make the dinner, you want to get it all done, to prove that you can do it. And I would say that then when I get a job, I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to put just as much of my heart into this as I do into everything else. And so the biggest challenge I would find with the profession and the home life balance is that you have to make sure that the priority is the home life. Because one thing I learned when I was on maternity leave, when I had Claire, so 5 years ago, was that the job goes on without you. And the job, like, you're not to say that you're not important, but you're a little bit not important, because the job will go on without you. But your family always needs you. You are always vital to them. And so I would like to say that I learned that lesson so well when I was on maternity leave with Claire, but I didn't. I went right back to work, and I was like 100% in, racing to pick up Claire from daycare every day and still hoping I was being a good mom. And then it wasn't until I had Joe that I was like, this is no way to live. I want to be there to be the mom for my kids. And so the challenge, I think, is having a true estimation of how your personality is and making sure that you always prioritize your family first. And even this summer, working at Catholic University, they were like, well, we need you to do this, and we need you to do this. And my personality is to be like, yeah, and I'll prove I can do it. Instead of being like, no, because my priority right now is to make sure that my kids are okay. We just moved to this new place, and I want them to know that they're okay. And it took me a while to get my priorities realigned. And it's only been, at the beginning of this semester, I was like, no, I need to focus on making sure I will only teach 2 days a week, because I need the other days to focus on my family and, the obligations that come with that. So I would say the primary challenge is thinking you have to do it all. And the way to overcome that is to make sure that your priority is your family, and then letting everything flow from there. I went into nursing because, to me, nursing was the best way that you could be like Christ in the world. And so I've been very fortunate that nursing is a serving profession. When you're taking care, I always tell this to my students when they complain about they have to go to work on Christmas or Thanksgiving. I did that too. I was 25 and I was upset that I was working Christmas Day. And then I don't know if the Holy Spirit enlightened me, and he was like, every person you're taking care of today, just think of as being, me. And then I started seeing God in every single patient. And that Christmas shift, I think, had the most religious impact on me. I felt like it was like my first Christmas, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually living my faith through my patients. And it's tough because every year I get so excited about Christmas and I get out my nutcrackers and everything, but like the real gift, the real gift is to remember that, Christ is with us. And so I think nursing is a blessing as a profession, because it lets you see Christ with us if you have the right mentality in every patient. And it lets you be a servant. It lets you wash their feet as our Lord washed the apostles' feet. So it really is, I think nursing is a great profession to keep you in aligned with your faith. That being said, like I told you, when you're working weird shifts, sometimes you get a little down. So you have to make sure that you're nurturing the part of your spiritual life with the hectic schedule that might not always seem like it's, together. So just being able to find that way to look at it is really important. Yeah, absolutely. So what I usually tell my students who are kind of struggling with whether or not to stay in nursing, especially if they've started nursing and they're not sure if it's right for them, I do say we go back to motivation. Who are they? Like, what is their heart? And if your heart is for service and your heart is for taking care of people, then you will succeed in nursing. And so I would say to those who are considering nursing as a profession, if taking care of people makes you nervous, it's not the profession for you. There are tons of ways that you can help people. You don't have to do it in nursing. But I would say that nursing is very versatile, and there's so many different paths that you can take to make it something that's feasible to have children and have a family without it affecting it in a negative way. And so I usually do tell my students about all the different paths and venues that nursing provides. I mean, look at me. I was a med-surg nurse, I was an ER nurse, then I was a PACU nurse, and then I was a nursing clinical nurse specialist, and now I'm a nursing professor. So there's like, and that's in my career of 15, 16 years, I guess. I've done so many things. So that's what I would say. You really have a lot of options available to you if you pursue nursing.